Welcome here to First Unitarian Church of Honolulu's Pau Hana. I know this is a Pau Hana that's going to be hugely interesting to the whole of Oahu. It's really just like Carl Rhodes and Nate Hicks were discussing the vitally important question of reopening the church and possibly looking at worship happening on Sunday mornings, and lots of the questions that have come up. We thought Jim and other members of the board and I thought it would be good to just, as early as possible after the decision, just start hearing what are people's questions, comments, concerns. Also hear a little bit about the form and everything. Say bye, Rob.
Bye, Rob.
Bye. Okay. Bye, Rob. You might recognize Rob from my ordination, who read the ordination prayer. So
St. Francis prayer.
That's right. So have fun printing your documents.
Thank you.
Okay. We do the important things around here. And so, yeah, so we thought we'd open this time to ask questions and hear a little bit about the beginning of this reopening process. I think rather than doing the whole send me, your written questions and going in the whole sort of NPR style, we'll just probably have open forum and I'll watch for people's hands and things like that. But for now, I'm going to add Jim to the spotlight here. And Jim, do you want to walk us through a little bit of, I think Martina's in the other room. Do you want to walk us through a little bit of what we can be looking at on March 6th?
Sure. So the board got together and we have approved a document that has all the ideas and steps for March 6th. I had Suzette, it's in the members section as of today. So it's the protocol for resuming worship services. If you have a login to the website, you can go view this document. And you may want to do that during this in case you have any questions that you see in that document. But what we're looking at is a limited number of people. We're still going to keep separation in the sanctuary. We'll have probably groupings of 2 chairs, 3 chairs, 4 chairs, but physically separated at some good distance from each other. It's going to limit us to about 50 people in the sanctuary. So we're also looking at having potentially overflow by putting chairs out in the porte cochere once the service starts. Because once the service starts, everybody will have been through the porte cochere to do the parking. We could set up some chairs out there, and we're still investigating that. That's going to obviously require some audio visual type of shenanigans, but Blake seems to think he's up to that. So that's another option that we're looking at just to be able to provide some additional seating beyond 50, and also in case there are people that show up that are more comfortable being able to be seated outside than inside. We're also looking initially, we're not going to have hospitality. We just want to keep this simple. We just want to have worship service. We want to be able to have people come in and get out, and make sure that we can do that properly before we start expanding. Reverend TJ has a mantra at our worship. When we do our worship run-throughs on Sunday mornings, he's only going to try one new thing every Sunday. So we're probably going to follow a simple type of similar type of process as we go through getting back into the for our worship services. We're looking at, because we're limiting it, we'll be looking at setting up some kind of reservation system. There'll probably be a Google form that you can go to, enter your name. And we're also looking at potentially, and I'd be interested in hearing feedback on this, potentially having people be able to pre-register their vaccination status, because we are only going to allow vaccinated people to attend in the sanctuary. So it would be helpful probably if we already had a list of people and their vaccination status, so that we wouldn't have to check at the door. We just say, oh, you're on our list. Okay, go on in. Trying to think if there's anything else. Masking will be required as of now in the sanctuary, with the exception of whoever is speaking at the pulpit or whoever is singing. As you've seen in the services we're having now, we do have people in the building and our singers are unmasked, but the congregation would remain masked. Congregation would be allowed to sing if they wanted to sing, but they would not be able to remove their mask for singing. I think that's kind of the highlights of it, unless you can think of anything I left out, Reverend TJ, or anybody
No,
else from the
there's a
board.
very, there's a very loud car parking outside, so forgive my the noise.
Yeah.
The other thing would be, I see a question. I would just add that I think also we're using the guidelines. So if you've had a PCR test in the last 48 hours, or is it only vaccine? I'm just trying to remember if
We, in our protocol, we have just vaccination required.
okay.
We don't have a negative test. It's just
Great.
yeah, that would be too much to try to police that, I think, for want of a better term.
I see one question, and you did kind of cover hospitality, but one question from a member who lives somewhat nearby to you, Jim. Hospitality question, and then I saw David Friedman's hand. Do you want to cover hospitality once more?
Right. So initially, March 6th, when we go back into the worship space, we will not have hospitality on that Sunday. I've talked to Marie. She's got some ideas. We've got some good ideas for how we can start bringing this in over time. With it won't be self-service. It will be more of a service available type of thing. But we just got to make sure we can get people in and out. And once we've conquered that, then we'll start looking at how do we let people hang around a little bit, and that's when we'll start bringing the hospitality back into the mix.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Let's go. Dave had his hand up first, and then we'll go to Matt. Dave, why don't you
okay.
ask away?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, evening. Hello.
It's morning somewhere.
So, thank you. Yeah, I'm just assuming that, like they say in the education world, this will be a hybrid model. And in other words, we will continue Zooming. And I just wondered, if there was any thought about that. I am sure that things will kind of unfold as they do. And this is a grand experiment. And, my hats off to the board and TJ and everyone who's put pre-thought into this. And we'll see how it goes, but I think it's a good plan. And I just wanted to comment that of course, the Zooming will in fact probably continue.
Thank you, David. Yes, absolutely. Zoom and Facebook will continue as they have. There's a lot of scurrying around in the sanctuary right now to make things nice. We got a little haphazard when we were just a few of us in there, and cords to trip over and bright lights sitting just a few feet from people's faces, things that are not conducive to having actual people sitting in chairs and looking toward the front of the sanctuary. So a lot of exciting things going on right now. Also exciting things going on in terms of getting the space ready for our youth to come back on that same Sunday, so we can have RE as well in the same building. So thank you, David, for that.
Yes, and you can repeat this over and over. We will always be hybrid forever. We'll always have a live stream of some sort. I see Matt's hand. We're gonna ask Matt to join the conversation. Hi, Matt. What's your question?
Hi. I wanted to echo what David said, and I'm sure you guys have been working. Spent a lot of time trying to figure out how this is going to work. So appreciation. And yeah, I was kind of wondering, are we going to be able to, is people on Zoom going to be able to see the whole congregation in some way or are we going to be able to log into Zoom if we're in congregation? Because if I'm there in person, how can I spam the chat?
I'm glad you got right to the point, Matt. We've can't. Do you mind if I take this one, Jim?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, we've thought about this. The first few weeks, if people are logging on their phones, there's a few things that are going to happen. There's going to be about a 3-second delay with whatever you're watching on your phone, and when your sound is on in the space, I don't get. And people who've been there have seen this. I don't get prima donna about a lot of things, but listening to a 3-second delay of worship while I'm trying to lead it is not going to work. So we'll have to have some kind of covenant of right sound relations if we're going to do that, which I confidently believe we can. The other is that, so that's one thing. The second is that the internet in the space is awful. We have these ancient walls that have metal in them and prevent.
See?
Yes, what's going on?
And I put it in her new house.
Yes.
Hi, Kay.
Hi.
Say hi.
And so I'm just trying to, and so we have, and so the internet's already not that great. One of the things I kind of thought of is there will be the Zoom, and we are looking at showing, you can show the Zoom chat as it's happening. And we could even have a way of saying hi by Zoom before the service. Like we could have a computer set up, a terminal or something like that. So we're looking at ways to do that. That probably won't be on March 6th. That'll probably be in the more things to be looked at in the future. But it's been clear from the very beginning that the Zoom interaction and ability to Zoom interactively is highly prized for people. It's something they've enjoyed, and it's something we want to let people have and continue to have. So if that's a long way to answer your question, Matt, but you will be able to log in during Zoom when you're in the space to spam the chat all you want. It just might require a little stink eye from the minister if your volume's turned up too high, or at all, actually. So my hearing is very sensitive. So
earphones could be recommended.
Yeah, it won't weird me out at all to preach to people in earphones. It'll be great. So thanks for the question, Matt. And also, we're recording this so that well, just because it's fun, but also if you get the question out, it's like you're recording it for posterity. So we're going to relook at this and remember what all the questions are and make sure everything's being addressed. So even if you just have please think about this, you don't have to answer now, make a record and we'll address it. So I see Carolyn's hand, and I'm going to ask her to join the conversation. And if anyone has an ability, just real quick, Carolyn, if you're not used to doing electronic hands after Carolyn, let's do, people can just pipe in if you want. You don't have to do anything. Go ahead, Carolyn.
My questions are about parking, and I realize people may not have thought a lot about that yet. But what about cars that arrive late? There's still the spaces on the entry side that are available for parking. But I've got to keep them free, I guess, until the other side is full. I wonder if the porte cochere is going to be occupied. It's I guess you're taking a little bit of a risk if you're coming late.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah.
Thank you, Carolyn, for that. Yeah, that's one thing that we were looking at, potentially reserving the parking by the gallery initially, so that everybody who comes early would just pass through and park on the other side. I know, people get used to parking in a certain place, and that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to deal with, I think. But I think if we can do that until the service starts, and then once the service starts, we can direct anybody who comes after the service starts to park next to the gallery. We would then allow us to be able to set up the chairs in the porte cochere so that we could have that overflow. And you know, it's possible that we might not even need to set up chairs in the porte cochere, just depending. So, but we want to be able to have options and flexibility. And I think to give us the most flexibility, that's what we're looking at as the way to do that.
I didn't know about those extra parking places. I think that's amazing on the highway.
Mm-hmm. And it may sound funny to park on the poly, but it's a very wide area where you're parking, and you can get all the way over to the sidewalk and come up. It's actually made the poly traffic so much easier now, because that's where a lot of the work trucks are parked, in those spots. But on the Sundays they're not there, and you can park there. For those of you who aren't reading the chat or didn't wear your reading glasses, Nancy Schilt very helpfully reminded us that there's 10 or more parking spaces now church side along the poly, in front of Temple Emmanuel, on the church side of the street now in New Uanu. So that's a place to park as well.
I
Wonderful.
think I saw Molly's hand up.
Oh, Molly, yes, please.
Yeah. I'm concerned about closing the porte cochere to traffic. I think we have to maintain a way to get the cars from one side of the church to the other for safety purposes. And it is possible to drive around the porte cochere. We could do that. If there are going to be people seated in there, I think we could have people drive around the porte cochere to get to the parking area. I'm concerned about trying to reserve parking anywhere other than where people expect to find a parking attendant, because we do not have enough volunteers to have 2 parking attendants. And I don't want to see Carolyn or any of the other parking attendants trying to run from one side of the church to the other to keep that space by the gallery free, and at the same time direct people around the porte cochere to park on the grass. It's just not possible with the number of volunteers that I've been able to sign up so far.
Thanks for that.
I have another point. Could we put overflow people, in other words, more than 50 people inside, by having chairs and a Zoom access on the second floor in the big meeting room that, as far as I know, is not being used for any purpose? There are plenty of people who are capable of climbing the stairs. Has that even been considered?
That has not been considered. That's something that certainly could be considered. We hadn't thought about providing any space other than, you know, what was on the first floor. So that's certainly something we can look at, Molly. As for the parking, yeah, if we don't have enough parking attendants, we'll just have to do what we can do. So it's a good point to make here that a lot of this being successful is going to depend on how much people want this to be successful, and how much people want as many people as possible to be able to attend the services, which may mean maybe volunteering for a spot that you haven't volunteered for before. It's a good opportunity for us to try new things and try out new things, and maybe stretch ourselves a little bit. But thank you, Molly, for those points.
Yeah. Great. We have a few hands raised. We're going to go the Youngs, then Marie, then Mary McKay. Go ahead, Youngs.
I got it.
You got it? Okay. I'm just remembering a long time ago when there were several of our church cars parked out on the Poly. I remember that Shannon Wood's car was destroyed and 2 others were very badly damaged.
Mine was destroyed once too, trying to get in.
And Mike was once. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm quite willing to be a parker. I have not been asked to volunteer for anything. I didn't realize you were short. You got to volunteer right here for whenever you want.
Who you
Thank
calling
you, Mike.
short, Mike? No, I'm just
You're on the list.
Good job, Molly. Thank you, Mike.
This is actually just a surreptitious plan between us and Molly to get volunteers for everything we need to happen. Thank you, Mike. And that is it's a very good point about the poly. I hear you. Thank you.
I will say though that the poly is configured much differently now than it was previously because all the lanes have really been shifted over, almost a whole lane since they reconfigured that median. So take a look at it when you're over there. I mean, obviously, if you're not comfortable parking on the poly, and it is kind of a little bit nerve-wracking to be the first car that parks there because you do feel pretty open to all of those cars that are barreling down the poly. But it is a designated parking space.
Yeah, and it's very clearly these striped lines. It looks like a median. Great.
Put a cone out.
We'll go to what's that?
Put a cone out.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking also we could put some cones on the gallery parking so no one has to actually police it and then just pick the cones up after, but we'll work that out. Marie and then Mary. Go ahead, Marie.
Well, one of the things I was going to say, I park behind the porte cochere wall a lot. And I looked at it when we had one of these conversations at, I forget which meeting I was at. I went out and thought about it, and you'd have to give up 4 parking places in order to be able to drive behind there.
Yep.
So that's an issue that, but I'm absolutely sure that we're going to be able to work this out. Absolutely.
Yeah. The main factor, thank you very much for that, Marie. The main factor we don't know is how many people are going to try to come.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this is going to be a rolling adaptation to what we see occurring. So for instance, Duro was explaining that in his congregation of, 900 to 1,000 members, they were getting 150 on the busiest days. So they were getting roughly 15%. And most it was like 80. So I think we're going to have a higher percentage than that, but many of my colleagues have said the same thing. They do all these preparations for all this. Like we're thinking the number 50, and I don't want to, I'm not just trying to challenge everyone, but the trend tends to be in the lower percentages than people realize. And we're talking about a number that's roughly half of what we were averaging in worship right up until the pandemic. 50s, we were averaging 98.5 a Sunday up until the pandemic. So Marie, can we come back to you? We've had 2 people waiting for a little while.
I had one more question. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sure. Go ahead.
No, I was in parking. I was wondering if we were going to have access to the lot across the street again, the Workman's.
That's pretty unlikely. They're not a fan of the Black Lives Matter banner. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They've stopped parking on our property because of it as well. So,
Okay.
Yep. All right. Mary.
Molly, I think you should make a list of everyone who's on this call who's not already on your volunteer list.
I can send you the list, Molly. You don't have to.
You probably on top of that for me. Some practical stuff since I'm planning to be a greeter. And do we have a criteria for masks? I know that at Bishop Museum, neck gaiters and stuff like that. There's a whole sign of what is and isn't allowed. And I just skimmed the protocol and I didn't see that, but as one who might be interacting with people that morning, I'd like them to have good masks. But I would need to be empowered to say that. It can't just be, I, Mary, think you should have a better mask. And then the walking from parking along the poly, if we're going to do that, I would really love to encourage the more able-bodied and childless among us, because I think there's the walking along the poly, but also as people get to the corner of Jack Lane there, people tend to kind of cut diagonally over towards the driveway, at which point cars that are turning cannot see them. And that happens with pedestrians from the bus also, but it creates an extremely dangerous situation because people come whipping around the corner. So I don't want to see any kids squished. No squished kids. That's my number one. No squished anybody, but no squished kids. And regarding the percentage that comes, my small congregation in Alameda went live in July. We went back on Zoom for Omicron, but I'd say we had about 90% coming in. But we have a very large, airy sanctuary for a small congregation. So I think that really affected how safe people felt in coming. But that's somewhat true in Honolulu, not the size, but the airiness. So people, mainland congregations where it's too cold to open the doors, people may have a lot more reluctance to come. Anyway, so don't write them off. They may show up, TJ.
Oh no, I'm hoping. That's my plug was to try to get it closer to 90%.
I was really surprised in our congregation we have a couple of people who are actively in chemotherapy who did not come, and unvaccinated children who did not come, but otherwise pretty much everybody showed up. They really wanted to be there.
Yeah,
so that's it for me.
Thanks.
So criteria for masks, that's kind of my biggie.
Yeah. Jim, you want to take that?
Yeah, we didn't spell it out in the protocol. Masks will be required. I believe we need to provide masks for people, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, here's the mask that we require for entry. It's good, N95, KN95.
So does that mean, is a cloth mask okay? Is a neck gaiter okay? What does and doesn't cut it?
I volunteer to have a whole big batch of acceptable legal masks available.
Probably stolen from Hana Bay.
But I think that's a different issue than what we allow, because if somebody's got their cute little cloth mask that they really want to wear, are we okay with that?
As long as they wear it over an approved mask.
So
Yeah.
Okay. So
I think what I'm hearing is the board, we could tweak the board could tweak the procedure with naming the kind of masks that are acceptable, which would empower folks who are at the door to point to the situation and just say this is what we require.
One would hope there's no argument, but if there is, you want to have the power of the board behind. I'm sorry, that's board regulations, nothing I can do about it. You know how they are.
Yeah. Great. Thanks so much, Mary. We're gonna go to Beth, who's had her hand up, and then yeah. Hi, Beth. You're muted right now.
There we go. I think we should reconsider this porte cochere thing as a board member, and see if we can come up with an alternate place for overflow. I know there was some really good reason why we wanted it to be there, but as I'm hearing people talk and thinking about emergency vehicles needing to come through, it seems like it's a bad setup.
Did you get it?
So that was just something I wanted to put out, I guess, for us to consider. And I was also very curious about what the average attendance was pre-COVID. And you're saying it's around 100 or something. So that was only my only other question.
And thank you so much, Beth. If I may first, Jim, the number, that's what I call the all souls count. That's like children, worship participants, everyone having to do anything with the church service was averaging 98.5. So on some days it was 130, and on other days it was 75, and that's about kind of where it was. So yeah, that's where it is. It's hard to gauge. We actually have added a lot of people during COVID. Worship, I mean, during the COVID itself, we increased our church membership by 10%. So I don't know how that's all going to go. It's now in the last 6 months, it's starting to go down a little bit, but yeah, so I don't know exactly on those numbers. And what was the other question? Oh, the portico share. Yeah, I think as the board, you know, for those of you who don't know, Beth is on your board, one of your board members. Everything's up for discussion. I don't mind owning my dream of a portico share overflow that started this whole thing. I just thought it'd be so lovely. It's there, it's covered, it's so nice. But certainly, safety is always the most is always the most important question. And the way it would go is sort of like a portico share ballet, that there's nothing in there until worship is right about to start, and then that's where overflow people will sit in very movable chairs that, if they need to be moved quickly, can be, and then it will be cleared. It'll really just be for that 1 hour. And so yes, and I saw there's some chat questions. I'm gonna go. I didn't say exactly where they were.
Let me just
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Tag onto that for a second. Yeah, I'm hoping there won't be any emergency vehicles that arrive without our knowledge. So,
Right.
give us time to clear out the portico share area. So yeah, I think we'll be okay there. And you know, the other idea behind the portico share is just there might be people who will be more comfortable in an open air setting. Plus, if we do have those people that say, I'm wearing my cute little cloth mask and this is what I want to wear, we could direct them to the portico share area, which is going to be wide open. So there's a lot of benefits to having an open air space that we can direct people to.
Yep.
Which I think overcomes, to me, a lot of the what ifs that might happen that I think we could handle. Now, the one that was put in, that Mary put in about the handy van, that's you know, one we obviously don't have any control over, might be the most problematic if the handy van's showing up, bringing people late for service. But you know, I think we could even potentially have people gather out there and then set the chairs up just shortly after service starts.
So it's hard for me to track both the questions that are coming in as comments. If possible, if we could, I'd like to speak about it, because now I'm kind of like, what am I responding to? So first, Matt's question, is there somewhere else close by we could park that could shuffle folks to the church to and from? When I do a service on miracles, it's often this very miracle that I pray for. Yeah, we've thought for years, wouldn't it be nice to have an arrangement with Temple Emmanuel? And then we approach them and they're like, well, you can have these 6 spots and that'll be $80. You know, I mean, it's like there's, and we had that spot across the street, and it's actually just very busy now, apart from them no longer really liking us. And so there's some other, that's what a year and a half of free parking will do for people. You know, they just don't like you anymore. So that's I see Molly's hand's gone up a few times. So I just want to bring Molly back into the conversation. Go ahead, Molly.
We can always direct people to park on Jack Lane, which is very safe, walking from Jack Lane to the church, and it's only a block. Also, we used to have an arrangement with the Hare Krishna folks, and we had people willing to walk the 2 blocks to the Hare Krishna property. We could investigate that again.
Sure.
I would not dream of directing anybody to park on the highway. We know from experience that it's dangerous, not only for the cars, but it's dangerous for people getting out of their cars. And I just think that's not a good idea at all.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm
That's all right.
sorry to be so negative, but I think we have to learn from our past experience, and some of us go pretty far back in the past.
And it's different.
Great. Yeah, on the Hare Krishna temple, thank you. It is a really good point. I've tried to be in touch with them about a few things, the interfaith Thanksgiving service. They've had turnover of about 3 leaders just in the time of COVID. So it would mean getting in touch with whoever is new there, which I'm always happy to do. And that's something it had slipped my mind. So thank you for that, Molly. Great. And yes, David, go ahead.
Hello.
Why don't you, if you could unmute David, that'd be great.
There we go. Thank you. All right. Got me now? Yeah, I
Yes.
wanted to add a PS to Mary's comment about the masks and the criteria and people coming into the space. And this is probably or perhaps already been anticipated, but it just occurs to me that I think it would be prudent and relevant to have some signs posted that have the criteria spelled out, fairly like poster size, not just little miniature things with fine print, but rather things that you can see from 8 or 10 feet away as you're approaching the door, so that you can anticipate, and so that there's some backup, so that the people who are the greeters or anyone else involved would be able to point to the sign, and where it's spelled out, and it would say by request of the board or sanction of the board of the church or whatever. But I know it might be challenging to do so, but I think that any guidelines like that spelled out, where somebody would just have to point to the sign as backup, and so it's spelled out, rather than having people sort of break out into a discussion or a debate about whether something is legitimate or not, and create a fuss at the door. But I think just having some kind of graphics where, to whatever degree it's possible, I'd be happy to help with laying that out or whatever, if it's whether a computer printout or something. But I think it should be, not just a scribble, but something that looks somewhat defensible and professional.
Great.
That's all.
Thanks. Yeah, I think some signage always helps. So thanks so much, Dave. Great. And just I'm just going to go through a few of the things in the chat. Yes, the handy van is something to consider. I know I've heard from one of our members who uses the handy van. He will always be Zooming. So some of the more regular attendees who've been using the handy van, I know won't. I know that's not our only member, but some folks who are used to it have found the Zoom to be extremely helpful to their morning. And so that's one thing I wanted to ask. Yeah, Jim, maybe we could talk a little, or you could say a little more about the outdoors. Mary's question about being outside. Are we going to check vaccination, or how are we going to do masking? I honestly hadn't considered it too much. So do you have any thoughts on the outdoor folks?
Well, my thought was that to attend the service, you must be vaccinated, period. So whether you're inside or outside is just simply an option for people, and also a place for people to go if the inside is filled. So the requirements for worship would be vaccinated and masked.
Great. And then the gallery, we've discussed the gallery before. There's a few things with the sound system, the way it is now. If we were doing a separate transmission into the gallery, or maybe some kind of screen. The other issue is just that if we say 50 people in the sanctuary, but then say we have 20 in the gallery, all of a sudden when you come together, you've got 70. It's something we can definitely consider, like we will with all the spaces. But this is more of a question of how is the beginning going to look, and doing the very beginning right and building from there. But it's definitely something to consider. And I'm naming these partly because it's easier to have them all on film so we can rewatch this. And I don't know about the Buddhist temple on Jack Lane. I'm not sure how far away that is and how logistically that would work. I think it's a bit of a hike. Thank you. But I also see a hand from the RE team, as you are so named. So I'm going to ask Jo to ask her question.
Jo, helpfully has a comment, not a question. So
Okay.
I lose
You
the,
lose
the
TJ's
game.
name.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Joe.
And
What
that's, the comment is that Joe anticipates that her elder colleagues, so the second grader to sixth graders, will be in the gallery.
That's right. Yes.
So and so that's what we're anticipating. But we will figure that out. So that backspace will be initially colonized by RE.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And I see gratitude to Mike Young for providing masks. All right, it's getting hard to follow the chat. I really, I'll do my best. Yes, that's actually wonderful. One of the comments in the chat is when people pre-register with their vaccination or something like that, we can generate an email to them that has the rules very simply. They could get like a response email, an auto email. It just says, and this is what it is. So we know that everyone who's registered has got them. Thank you for that, Mary. And some discussions of deals on Amazon. Thank you. And also some other discussions of permeability. Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, Junko, I see your hand.
This is not a question.
Yeah.
I just want to say to the board and Jim Cooper and of course Reverend TJ for doing such a intelligent, well thought out approach to this. I mean, I feel so confident in our, what is the word, administration? No, that doesn't sound right. With our board and Reverend TJ. Thank you. Our leadership. Yes. I mean, I just sit back and have my wine.
Mahalo, Junko.
That's what we're aiming for. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm really happy to be, Dave and I will be two of the greeters. So we look forward to seeing some of you once a month.
All right. That's actually one of the, thank you so much, Junko. What you raised is, you know, starting to get in a little bit more rotation, you know, doing something once a month, doing something else in another month. And, you know, I don't know if this will lead to, there are going to be sort of more things to do around the church on Sunday mornings, I think. And it is going to take some more effort to do that. And so thanks. I've already heard some folks volunteering like this. Volunteerism is definitely going to help us carry the day here. So thanks. And one of the, oh, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. The more volunteers we can have up front in this process, the more smoothly it will go. And we'll see exactly how many people we need. We may have too many at the beginning. That'd be a wonderful problem to have. It just means things will go that much more smoothly. And Junko, this is definitely a group effort on part of the board and Reverend TJ. Everybody had good ideas, input, etc., on coming up with this protocol. So thank you for that. Shout out to our leadership. I'm really proud of the board that we have, and of course, extremely proud of the minister that we have as well.
Thanks, Jim. I see Janice's hand. Going to invite her.
Okay. I want to be able to clarify what Joe said, that there will be children in the using the gallery during the service. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
At least at the beginning. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So my question kind of follows into that. When you say you're going to get us in and out, it sounds, you know, like you're going to get pushed out. I was hoping that there would be some accommodation for us to socialize to some extent, maybe a few of us being able to go in the gallery or out, you know, wherever, spread ourselves out, maybe in the study. And I think we can all use good judgment in terms of keeping social distance to a certain extent. But you're suggesting that we just immediately leave after the service?
Well, there will be opportunity to gather outside. the problem with allowing people together inside, we've got to prep all the rooms. I mean, all the rooms have to be set up for distancing. They have to be open and ventilated. When you look at spacing requirements, there's a maximum of 14 people permitted in the gallery at one time to keep the proper amount of distancing. So, 14 people go in, 15th person once in, no can do, sorry. So, I mean, it's going to be easier for people to socialize in the open air. If people want to do that, we're not going to be kicking people out, but we will be keeping an eye on people getting close together in clumps in groups, right?
So just to clarify again, then we're probably, I don't want to say banned, but the gallery and the study will be off limits to people going in then, is what you're saying, not just even.
Correct.
People.
Correct.
Okay.
On March 6th, they will be, but
Yeah.
March 6th is not eternity. For the first phase, it's sanctuary for adults, and then the children, in other areas. And that is just how we're going to start this. And I realize it may not be the most attractive option for folks, but my experience of being in worship where they're doing this kind of thing, I was in Santa Fe, I was in some other churches where you really just go into the church and then you go, but being there and having music live and everything is quite a powerful experience. And I know that seeing one another is also important, but I'd encourage folks. The other thing the UUA has said is to remind folks that hospitality is actually, or not hospitality, but even just kind of mingling is the most common way to transmit, because it's when people take their masks down when they're standing the closest and are speaking. So they are very cautious about that. And they know how silly that sounds for a church to say, be careful of the one thing most people go to church for, or a lot of them do. But for now, it does tend to be a danger zone, that kind of activity on the premises indoors. So yeah, outdoor is good. So
Okay.
Thanks. Yes, Molly.
Just 2 points. We did at one time have an agreement with the Buddhist temple on Jack Lane for 6 parking spaces, and they weren't even going to charge us. But they wanted to designate which of their several parking spaces we could use, and our members could never remember that. And it meant we had to have another volunteer down there to make sure that our folks parked where they were supposed to park. I don't know who the current head of that temple is now, and if there would be a different arrangement if we were to ask for that. The other thing I want to tell you is that I have been surprised in calling people to sign them up for volunteering for Sunday morning at the people who have declined, who are longtime volunteers, who are simply reluctant because they don't feel safe being with other people yet. So I really do need to hear from all of you and anybody you can think of. Catherine has made 2 very good referrals, and both of them said yes. And they're people I didn't know or would not have thought of as volunteers. So I'm asking for your help in recruiting. And you have to communicate with me by telephone.
Yes. Would you like, Molly, for me to share your telephone number in the chat for people? Okay. Would someone be so kind, or do you want me to do it? Would someone, Mary, would you mind just putting, if you have a second? Thank you. It's an excellent point, Molly. Yeah, we all need to keep our ears open, and especially if you know someone kind of new. We have people who've been part of the church for 2 years who've never been to church. Bless them. And so we had one who joined and left the island before she ever got a chance to come to church, but she's our board secretary and she's amazing. Yes, Matt, thank you very much for adding Molly's number there.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. We'll go back to Joe's mom. Hi, Eleanor. How are you?
So I was thinking of the limited amount of current outside space that we have that's covered and that isn't already dedicated to cars. I would like us to encourage us to think more expansively about the porte cochere and maybe experiment with just starting rerouting the traffic from the beginning rather than doing sort of a peekaboo thing with the chairs and just getting us used to that. Maria's right, we will lose 4 spaces in that immediate place. But I think if, assuming that there will be fewer people and therefore less of a parking frenzy at the very beginning, this might be a good place to transition that. And it would give us a fabulous sort of outside gathering space that we wouldn't otherwise have.
And thank you. And I want to just hold up that one of the things we're going to be looking at, as we already have been in the year ahead, is accessibility for people of all kinds of mobility. And one of the advantages the porte cochere has is that it is accessible by ramp going in and out. Whereas some of the other outdoor areas that people might, who ambulate on both legs easily, might be able to access, will not be accessible for other people, whereas the porte cochere area or that kind of area, would be. So I'm always keeping an eye and my heart kind of on those spaces that all people can participate in. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eleanor. And it's not that that's not a possibility. It's just, I think, cautiously, and to me, cautiously is not giving up 4 spaces until we might see that we really don't need 4 spaces. So all this is an experiment. It's all experimental at this point, and we will be feeling our way. But that's certainly a long-term possibility that might manifest itself fairly quickly in this grand experiment we're embarking on. But thank you for bringing that up.
So in the course of just doing meetings like this and being a process observer at times, I just want to make space for folks who maybe want to kind of speak up or ask a question, or if they feel they don't want to send me a confidential question, you can. I didn't mean to bar the use of the private only. If you want to send me a private message to ask in the group here, so that your concern can be addressed without having to voice it publicly. I just think it's important in meetings to make space for that ability. So if you have something, you can message me privately and we'll address it. And we are coming in on time. I also should just say, you can also just call me or Jim or with whatever is kind of on your mind. And what I've told people, what I told the worship team, what I've told other people is, if you just are thinking like going to bed or like having a shower thought or making dinner and like some logistical thing pops in your head, I don't need decorum. I don't need niceties. You literally could just write in an email, don't forget that you need to take this out and then put this in, because we used to do it that way, period. Send it. It'll be on the list of things to address. I just don't want there to be any barrier between sharing of wisdom that people who have been doing this for much longer than I have will have, and that information getting to me and then to the board. And I hope the board will have the same understanding that if they receive a shower thought without that, we'll just take it under consideration. I just want there to be really clear communication and everyone's voice to be heard and wisdom to be appreciated. Does that make sense? Great. Jim, do you have any, we're coming up on time. Do you want to do a lightning round? Do you have anything that's come up or some thoughts or anything you want to share?
I just appreciate everybody attending this. Appreciate all the ideas that have been brought up, all the solutions, the problems, the vexations that we're going to be undergoing. And I see Catherine has just raised her hand, so we'll all defer to Catherine.
All right, Catherine, why don't you join the conversation?
Are we going to be taking temperatures?
No.
No. We have a few medical folk. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. That was in the original draft, and I was informed that taking temperatures is medical theater. So that if someone has a high enough temperature that it's going to register on a thermometer, they're going to feel so bad they're not coming to church in the first place. So yeah, very rarely do you, if you've ever seen places taking temperatures, you've probably never seen one of those things go off for that very reason. Good question. No, thank you. And one more.
No, I saw the temperature go off one time, the thermometer go off one time.
Okay.
That's all.
Good. Mary, come in. Yeah.
I think a really important issue is to, I mean, we've got that list of symptoms, but as Omicron demonstrated, the symptoms can be much wider than that. That if you just don't feel, if you're tired and you think you're just tired because you did too much yesterday, don't come to church unless you self-test. If you are sneezing and you think you have allergies, thinking it's allergies isn't good enough. Don't come to church unless you self-test. You know, that little scratchy sore throat, I was talking a lot, yet all that stuff that we're used to just dismissing because our bodies are kind of quirky, just do a self-test.
Thanks, Mary. And you raise another really good point that the worship leaders, including myself, musicians, we're still looking at the exact protocol, but pretty much anyone who's going to open their mouth or take off their mask and worship, Leslie, me, or I think that we'll be testing that morning, or late at night Saturday, and agreeing not to go do anything. But I think Sunday morning is probably going to be the thing. So we're going to have some flexibility too, because if something comes back questionable, you know, we're going to have, we might be roping the greeters in to sing the anthem. So no, we're going to have to do that. But that's something that we're working out administratively with the musicians and myself, and other preventive issues like that. But yeah, the increased, we're also keeping our eyes on test kit bulk purchases that will have also as a secondary thing available at the church for folks. So thanks for bringing that up, Mary. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, well, it is 6:58, friends. Any thoughts for the sake of the order here, or is it frozen pizza time for Reverend TJ?
My thought is I am so glad we're going to be back together. So
I am too.
Thank you, board.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and March 6th, I'll just repeat it and you can tell it to everyone. March 6th is not forever. We're going to try this. We're going to look at things. I'm going to make terrible mistakes and the board's going to bail me out. It's going to be fantastic. And it's going to be, we're going to all get through it. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for a wonderful Hana. We'll probably be doing another one of these before March 6th. I know that there's some other people I have lined up, but I think we need to kind of hear progress in some of these things, see how things develop, and have another session like this. So we'll have a chance to speak again. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Reverend TJ.